Yo, what is up, Bitcoiners? Hope you guys are doing well today. Welcome back to another Build a Mind podcast. I'm your host, Trevor Bello. Today, we're going to be jumping down the rabbit hole with a fellow heat punk and an educator, Michael J. Kelly. He is a PhD and a senior fellow of the Bitcoin Policy Institute in DC. He is the founder and director of the Bitcoin Lab at Binghamton University and a lecturer in religious studies. Michael is a recent Fulbright Fellow to Ireland and senior research fellow at the University of Hamburg in Germany, and was formerly an associate lecturer at the University of York, UK, and a visiting professor at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. So this episode is going to be very interesting, very enlightening. I am really excited about this. We definitely dive down a lot of different avenues. We talk about the convergence of Bitcoin and religion and history of money. And it's just a good episode to really get into. We don't touch too much on mining. I think it's kind of spread in a little bit here and there, but that's okay. This is a Bitcoin adjacent podcast, and I had fun with this one. I respect Michael a lot, or Bitstorian a lot, and I really enjoy this conversation. So I hope you guys too. Hope you guys do as well. Before we jump down into this rabbit hole that me and Michael go through, I've got a couple of things I want to show you, and then we'll get right into the podcast.
Welcome to the Mastermind Club, your ultimate gateway into the world of Bitcoin mining. Whether you're just starting out or looking to scale your operations, our vibrant community of like-minded enthusiasts is here to support you every step of the way. Join us for weekly sessions led by industry pros, where you'll exchange ideas, brainstorm strategies, and stay motivated on your mining journey. From heat management to site optimization, our monthly deep dives cover the technical know-how you need to succeed. And with access to our entire back catalog, you'll never miss a beat. But that's not all. Our members enjoy exclusive one-on-one sessions with veteran miners, plus direct access to special pre-sales and insider opportunities at Bitcoin Mining World. Ready to take your mining to the next level? Join the Mastermind Club today and secure your spot in the future of Bitcoin mining. Visit bitcoinminingworld.com or scan the QR code now. And now back to the show.
All right, as always, I've made it very easy. Go to the QR code there at the bottom of the screen or the link in the show notes to find out more about the Mastermind Club. This is a great community of like-minded individuals who are all trying to decentralize Bitcoin's hash rate, secure the network by building their own Bitcoin mining operations. Whether you're a small guy like me, you're trying to build some hash rate heat reuse, or you want to be a large industrial miner, doesn't matter. The Mastermind Club is definitely a great place for you to join. And by the way, it's completely free. All right. And the last thing I want to tell you guys about is Bitcoin Alaska. So this is an event that I'm going to be going to in July 5th and 6th. Now, there are some satellite events that start on the 1st all the way up to the 5th and 6th. And this is going to be a really, really great event. Now, if you haven't heard me talk about Bitcoin Alaska before, you're really missing out, to be honest. Bitcoin Alaska is one of those events where it's Bitcoin only, first and foremost. There's not going to be any shit coins. There's not going to be any altcoins built, around Bitcoin or near Bitcoin. It's Bitcoin focused. This is an event that's put on by some incredible people. Wade and Rick are just absolutely phenomenal. I love what they're doing with Bitcoin veterans. I love Mel, who's putting on the event as well. We've had her on the podcast. And, it's just, this is going to be a high signal event. You've probably heard me talk about some of the other high signal events that I've been to in the past, such as the Heat Punk Summit up in Denver. This is going to be one of those ones as well. I'm really looking forward to it. And, one of the things about these conferences that we go to all the time is that a lot of them have just been inundated with all of this shit coinery, and it really drags down the conference vibes. It drags down the energy. You get a lot of people there that aren't really in it for Bitcoin and the long haul and the fundamentals, and that's not going to happen at Bitcoin Alaska. Bitcoin Alaska is for the Bitcoiners. It's for people who really want to see the narrative move forward, really want to see the proliferation of Bitcoin, the network, the people, and the projects built on Bitcoin. One thing about Alaska is that Alaska has a ton of unused, underutilized energy resources. I'm talking geothermal, I'm talking solar, I'm talking, hydropower, all of these different types of energy resources that are being underutilized, not really taken advantage of. And I think that there's a perfect symbiotic relationship between the energy resources in Alaska and Bitcoin mining. And then, not to mention, there is an underserved citizenry, an underserved population that could really benefit from the use of Bitcoin mining, the use of Bitcoin in their state as a treasury reserve, and just, helping them become sovereign individuals in a sense. So I am really looking forward to this event. This is going to be a lot of fun. There's a lot of really cool parties and family oriented events before the conference. So definitely get your tickets to Bitcoin Alaska. I'm going to share where is it? There it is. I'm going to share the link at the bottom of the screen. So that is HTTPS. That is bitcoinalaska.org slash. So that is bitcoinalaska.org. Definitely make sure that you go there, get your tickets. I'm sure the well passes are already gone. The VIP tickets are gone, but the general admission are still there, and it's going to be a lot of fun, and flights are getting expensive as well. So if you're going to be there, if you want to be there, you want to take your family up there, get your tickets now. All right, guys, with that, let's get into the podcast with Bitstorian or Michael J. Kelly. All right, Michael, welcome to the Build a Mind podcast. Appreciate you hopping on with me today. How are you doing today, brother?
Fantastic.
Awesome. I'd love to hear it. So this is going to be an interesting podcast for me because I feel like I'm probably going to learn a lot of things that I didn't understand. At the end of the day, I am just a Bitcoin pleb, man. I listen to a lot of books. I read a lot, or
Listen to a lot of books.
I listen to a lot of books on Audible. I read books, but I listen to mainly podcasts. And a lot of times the information that I listen to just kind of goes in one ear and out the other. And I just go on with my day. I understand like the core fundamentals of Bitcoin at a very high level. I'm not like a technical dev. I don't get into things really deeply. So today's episode is going to be a little interesting for me because as a fellow at the Bitcoin Policy Institute, you really have your head fully into the world of education and deep understanding of Bitcoin and the world around us. And so I think it'll be interesting to just have a conversation and maybe I can learn a couple of things from your perspective. But before we do that, I'd just like to give you a little bit of time to tell my audience who Michael J. Kelly is, who Bitstorian is, who are you, and what is your role at BPI?
Yeah. Well, now I'm doxxed.
I'll delete that. I'll delete that. I apologize.
I'm just kidding. Everyone knows who I am. So who I am. My PhD is in history, and it seems maybe a bit of a strange path to Bitcoin. But of course, there are no Bitcoin PhDs yet. So we're working on building that, but we'll get into that later. I work on maybe some of the stuff we'll talk about later there's a lot of stuff that doesn't seem to make sense at first when I talk about it, and I hope that it makes sense together. Like my PhD is in history, and I work in Judaic Studies department, professor in religious studies and Judaic studies, and but I'm also working in quantum mechanics. So, like how do theology, quantum mechanics, and Bitcoin work together? Well, hopefully we'll get to that in a bit. But I also created, I think it's the first Bitcoin lab and comprehensive-ish Bitcoin studies we call it program on campus at Binghamton University. It's not a program yet, and that we don't have a degree in Bitcoin studies, but we haven't come up with a better word. So we're holding that one for when we do. But we have an actual Bitcoin mining lab, which we on campus, and I believe we were the first research university to have such a thing in the U.S. And so that's how that all fits together. We can get more into, but I'm also, as you said, a senior fellow at the Bitcoin Policy Institute. I came right before coming to the Bitcoin Policy Institute, the BPI. I was a Fulbright fellow in Ireland, University College Cork, working on the book that I'm finishing writing now, which is on the concept of human nature and how that relates well to Bitcoin. So, and before that, I was senior fellow. So I was, yeah, I think a senior fellow in Hamburg at the University of Hamburg in Germany, working also on the concept of human nature, but nothing related to Bitcoin. And yeah, that's sort of me in short. I'm also, as a historian, also an author, and editor, and writer, and educator, and all of that. And yeah.
Yeah, I'm definitely want to dive into the interplay between Bitcoin and history and some of these studies that you've diving into. But before we get into that, what led you down the path of Bitcoin? I know a lot of people come to Bitcoin in a lot of different ways. Some people come in for the number go up, some come in for the sovereignty aspect of it. I'm just curious, like why did you get interested in Bitcoin and decide to take on a leadership role in educating people about the role of money and Bitcoin in our society?
Sounds like a small question, but it's
It's a huge question.
really huge. So I'll start with what brought me in, and then the next point on what kept me in and what drove me then to now. I'll leave that latter part for further later in the discussion, but it's a bit of a banal answer, right? People ask me why I decided to do when I studied my history, and my PhD is looking at late antique and early medieval Spain. People ask me, why did I study Spain? The very banal answer is I thought it would be much more fun to spend my research time in Spain than in Pennsylvania. So, like, I could do American history. What am I going to do? I'm going to, go around the U.S. So,
Spain sounds like more fun.
and it has been, and I was right. So I'll be right about this. So, but it's even more banal. Honestly, my real reason getting into Bitcoin originally was because I figured there was no other way I would ever pay off my student loans, and that's it. And I figured it was my path to financial sovereignty,
Mhm.
And it has been, and I love teaching the students about that, and bringing up these issues with them and what they can do with it, and all the million things we can and should be doing with Bitcoin on campus to help students.
Mhm.
And then from there, I started to really dig in, deep dive and dig into Bitcoin, and I realized how much it aligns with my personal interests, my personal beliefs, my academic interests, and lots of the stuff that I had tried to do as a young kid, as a teenager, from then and forward, of trying to fight for a fair system and justice, and against corporations, and I come to Bitcoin from an unusual political position. I mean, I think, from the very far left. So, and I think it's such an amazing tool for emancipation,
Mhm.
and one that I didn't think of when I was young, but that really kept me in it. And now I honestly am at the point where I'm working on building a class where I see Judaism as a theology, and Bitcoin together as solving the problems of the theory of everything.
Hmm.
Get right, how we bring quantum physics and relativity together. I think some Jewish theology and Bitcoin as a process can get us there. We can talk about quantum gravity later in the show, and the ideas of, yeah, um, um,
So
spiritually.
what's interesting to me when I think about, your explanation, your introduction is, I have a very young son right now, and I'm literally watching him kind of become a human and, realize his surroundings. And one of the things I've noticed the most is his just proclivity to freedom. Like, he doesn't like to be restrained. He wants to move around and do the things that he wants, and he wants to, get into whatever he wants to get into. Like, there is no restriction for him in his mind. He can go anywhere and do anything. And to me, what I see a lot in this world, based on my education, my upbringing, and, the people around me, is that we are, as we age, as we get into young adulthood and into adulthood, we are put into little boxes, through our education, through society, kind of putting us in different places that they feel we need to go. And that could come from our parents. It could come from our peers. Most of the time it comes from, state sponsored indoctrination camps, if you want to put it, for lack of a better phrase. And the biggest thing is that, like, they don't teach us about money. They don't teach us about responsibility. They don't teach us about freedom and, what it means to be free. Not free as in free beer, but free as in freedom. Like, you are free to make decisions and and have choices, but you have to deal with those consequences. And what does that mean
Mhm.
on an intrinsic, deep level? So, like, for you, as someone who is a, Bitcoin educator, you were also, you understand history on a deeper level than most people probably do. And, studying money as well, what are your thoughts on this new, I don't want to call it a new world order, because, like, the world isn't changing that quickly and it's not like one unified front, but the way the world is changing as new generations come up and are raised and are learning about Bitcoin through, your Bitcoin education program and other programs out there. What is this phase shift that we're going into, and how does it impact society? I didn't really phrase that correctly, but maybe you can kind of parse that out a bit.
Yeah, certainly. So it's two sides, just for me personally. It's my father's side of Catholicism and my mother's side of Judaism, and I explore those together also as a scholar. And it relates to this because uh, I grew up very well, not very, but yeah, pretty poor. I grew up in public housing in Boston, and to me, capitalism was the projects. Capitalism was poverty and disaster and destruction, and that's how I came to Marx. And I grew up as a Marxist and a communist. And as I grew and I explored what this really means, I realized that what attracts me is the concept that is also at the core of Judaism and the earliest Christianity, and I believe Catholicism in its theology, not its practice as a religion, is decentralization. And I think that Bitcoin is an experiment in decentralization, but it's not brand new. To me, Bitcoin is the reactualization of the same attempt at decentralization that Jesus and his followers attempted, that all early Christians attempted to. When Jesus says, render unto Caesar, I read that as just, who cares about fiat? Seriously,
Yeah.
like, I mean, Jesus was the first Satoshi. Maybe it's Satoshi. I don't know. Um, and his followers follow that. They reject money. They reject state money repeatedly throughout the Bible and all the early sources. But this is an idea that comes up, that returns to human existence in the West, anyways. I'm not a scholar of the Far East, so I don't know. That we see it again. For me, the rise of Marxism and communism in the 19th century, and then movements of socialist movements like the kibbutz in Israel was again an anti-state, anti-centralization movement. That's how I see it. When I talk about that, that's what I mean. As this is idea that we keep trying to decentralize our society and our world, and that's also the more of the political sense of anarchy. I think a lot of times we use anarchy just in a colloquial way, meaning that it's just chaos and people can do whatever they want. But anarchy is a real political theory, and I think that Bitcoin fits that as a political theory in a decentralized sense. So, so for me, uh, whatever I mean, I don't consider myself on any particular political spectrum anymore in America, just the Bitcoin line. And the Bitcoin line is decentralization and currency, decentralized currency. I
Mhm.
mean, it's just, to me, Bitcoin is the same as when Martin Luther nailed the theses to the door and told the church, you no longer have sole authority. And when there's only one source of power, how can we imagine a democratic and free and open society? It's
Yeah.
it's an illusion. So if we, the people, are creating the currency, we have a chance here to actually build direct democracy. Bitcoin announces that representative democracy is done. We don't need it anymore. We have the tools now for direct democracy.
Mhm.
And there's a crisis that governments are figuring that out, and they're like, what do we do? How do we keep power without the ability to create it? And that's also why I love the heat punks movement, because it's really, heat punks is it's such a core, such a radical movement in the sense of bringing real democracy to society,
Mhm.
and maybe one of the most profound ways we've ever attempted. So yeah, try to keep my answers short, man.
Yeah,
But
no, you can take them as long as you want, man. We've got some time, and I do love the more in-depth answers because I feel like it gives me a better understanding. Like I said, I don't really retain a lot of information when I read and when I listen.
yeah,
So when I have these conversations, I feel like I learn more and I get to get a more personal perspective of, the things that you're seeing in the world. And, my biggest thing is that, like, I think that education is very important. And if we, I'm a Bitcoin maximalist. I try not to be toxic, but I am a Bitcoin maximalist and I don't pay attention to anything else. But I am afraid of what the future of Bitcoin looks like because there is not enough education and not enough good education. Like, people can talk about Bitcoin ad nauseum, like, until they're blue in the face. But if we're not reaching people on a fundamental level and saying, hey, these are the core reasons why Bitcoin matters and what that means for us as a human race, as society, it's not going to matter. It really isn't going to change anything. And so, some of the things that you're doing, the reason why you got into education, I mean, is probably very similar. You see a problem, you see an issue with the world. Maybe it's centralized education, maybe it's centralized government, and you want to fix it. You want to change the way that we view money and the history of money and Bitcoin, and you want to provide that to the world so that the world can be better. There is definitely a very interesting relationship between religious studies, and you can look at Judaism, you can look at Christianity, and you can look at money, and this whole idea of interest and the flipping of the money changers tables and stuff like that. The way Jesus, like, looked at money is very interesting versus, like, how we see money in society today, and
yeah,
how banks are constantly taking our money and loaning it out to get interest, and we really don't have access to that anymore. So it's like, is Bitcoin, I guess I'll get down to my question, is Bitcoin, from a religious standpoint, is Bitcoin this way to fix this relationship that we have to value in the world? Because value is tied up in money. Money is tied into value and energy. And we've kind of lost the we've lost our way in a sense where we don't recognize, like, not me and you personally, but like as a society, we don't recognize the value in money and like our time spent for those things. We just kind of buy things, throw those things away, buy new things. And is that because there is this weird relationship between how money is created and distributed versus what we spend our time to, how we spend our time to get that money? This is,
Well, well, this is another one of those things. It's probably going to be a long answer.
do it, go
'Cause
for it.
there's a lot to this. But sometimes just I do think with Bitcoin, what would Jesus do? Just because I mean, I'm not a religious person. I'm just a scholar of religion. It's super fascinating, but I mean that seriously because as a historical figure, and all the people around him as historical figures, they were very much against money and wealth. And it's not just in the New Testament, like you're saying, flipping over the tables and so on in the temple. This goes for many centuries, and it's a dedicated shift in the church by Augustine, um, of Hippo, or Saint if you're religious. He had a fight with this guy called Pelagius, and a couple others. And anyways, long story short, there was an argument that poverty is the product of wealth. So if there's no wealth, there's no poverty. And that makes a lot of sense, especially when all the money and wealth is created from one source. So one of the interesting things that happens is that the Catholic Church, anyways, decides that you no longer have to give up all your wealth. You only have to give up a portion. You only have to donate some
100%.
money. And this sort of changes everything. This changes Christianity into what we know it today, what most religions operate as today. So that there are some people in the religion that sort of they do all the hard work, monks, nuns, and so on. The rest of us can kind of just live in the regular dynamics of the world. So, and this and this is a very interesting shift though, in 6th, 7th century Spain. So right at, not too long afterwards, and this relates because the Visigoths, who are controlling Spain at this time, they create what I'm starting to argue and determine is a very interesting fungible, non-fungible currency. And they actually create a totally decentralized current gold currency system, which is very unique. And I think that they have hundreds and hundreds of mints all over the peninsula. And local artists, local people, through their own energy, through their own tools, are creating the currency that the broader kingdom is using, only vaguely under the authority of the king, which to me, is a lot like Bitcoin in the US. We're all making it, and when we can make it with our own tools, our own energy, in our own locations, it is with the approval of the government in the same way, right? And the government has decided or that it's okay that we do this, and so we're doing it. They could change their mind and force us not to do it. Um, so to me, it's a very similar development. But in terms of uh, value, Bitcoin as value, oh man, to me, I talk a lot about in my research. I think, like, how do we get to value? Like, what is value?
Mhm.
A couple things. One, there's no such thing as inherent value.
Right.
Nothing has inherent value. Nothing. Like, if you can think of something, we can debate it. That's great. I tell that to the students all the time. Even nothing. Oxygen, air, water, food, life. Some people don't want life. They kill themselves.
Water is most
So
valuable or not valuable to a drowning man, but to a thirsty man, in the middle of a desert, water is the most valuable thing in the world.
yeah, everything is a spectrum. There's no such thing as inherent value. So we
Mhm.
can throw that out pretty easily. So for me, value comes in the way that we determine value for almost everything, right? How do we determine value in history or religion or mathematics or anything else? We connect the abstract to the real, and we give meaning to that process and its products. right? So whether you're writing history, I mean, the past is not real, right? And it never was real and never will be real. It's simply an abstraction from the present that we use. We deploy the scientific method to connect that abstract to history, which is real. And it's the same thing in religion, right? God is not real in that sense, or wherever else, whatever else you're praying to, it's an abstraction that you're connecting into your reality. And it's the same with using machine code to sit here and talk into an inanimate object to you. We're connecting the abstract to the real. That's what we do, and Bitcoin does that by connecting to electricity, to
Mhm.
raw energy, to the universal. And it deploys the full scientific method to create value, and fiat doesn't do that. And the scientific method is, we use it in everything. It doesn't matter if you're in literature or the arts or the hard sciences. It's a simple process. We determine what is evidence by the existing language that we have in abstractions. We turn some of that evidence into facts, and then we assemble those facts into our truths. And I think what we disagree in society is not the truths, but the facticity process.
How we get to the truth.
A- Absolutely. So we can all look at the character of God in the Bible,
Mhm.
and we can say, well, that is a fact for there being a God. That is a fact that some people in the ancient world had this monotheistic idea. Some can say it's a fact that there was this cool character written a long time ago, maybe. Uh, but and then you can once you have those facts, you just create different truths from that. But we agree that it's evidence. All right, we have evidence, all the same evidence, and we've turned it into facts in different ways. And that's what Bitcoin does. Bitcoin's consensus mechanism, to me, that's what it does in a transparent way. It puts all the evidence, everything coming in, right there in front of everybody in everyone's mempools, and shows you transparently the process by which you create facts, by which we in the Bitcoin network have created facts from that evidence. And then we can narrate them however we want. And fiat does not do that. It only it determines immediately what is a fact, and converges the evidence and the fact portion. And separating those out is very important to understanding truth, and to me, for anything to have value.
Yeah. No, it makes sense. It's this idea that, there's fiat is a centralized truth mechanism where, the central party, the central node gets to choose what the truth is. And, we cannot audit that truth. Whereas Bitcoin is a system where anyone can, it's a decentralized system of truth, and we can come through and audit that truth ourselves. We can see the history of the blockchain, we can see where these transactions are going. There is kind of an abstraction between like the actual person who made that transaction, but you can still see the wallet addresses that it goes to, you can see the data that's been put in, and you can see the physical energy that has been, demanded to build out this system. And I think that's very important. What scares me, because we talk about the world needing better money, and people needing this idea, people needing truth so that they can recognize the facts and they can come together in more of a unified way. If the world is not fighting because of their truth, like the two different truths, if you and I are arguing because your truth is different than my truth and neither one of us can find common ground, we're not going to get anywhere. But if we can both see, we can both audit the truth ourselves and then build our factual basis from that, then we can find common ground and we can build a relationship that is positive for you, for me, for the whole world. And so what I see as an issue is that Bitcoin is becoming increasingly more difficult for the average person to get into. So, you have to spend 10,000 hours just learning about the history of money and the fundamentals of Bitcoin in order to grasp it just a little bit. But as Bitcoin gets more valuable, it's kind of abstracted away from the core ethos of Bitcoin. So, what are your thoughts on how we kind of rein this back in and educate people around why Bitcoin matters, and how do we show them that it's not super difficult, it's just kind of really confusing at first.
Yeah, and I don't think that my arguments, I haven't even got into quantum mechanics here, are making it easier. But so money before Bitcoin, fiat money, it doesn't deploy. It's not scientific. Its value is purely hedonistic. Right? Money, as we've always known it growing up, and until Bitcoin, is pure hedonism. It's just a promise of pleasure. If you hold this little thing, you can get pleasure at some point in the future of any kind of pleasure you want, and
Hmm.
that's it. So to me, that doesn't create real value. And Bitcoin is the entire scientific process, and so it generates. I think that all of the value, everything we hold valuable, is a full deployment of the scientific method. Our identities, our beliefs, our use of technology, and so on. So, uh, but in terms of, um, yeah, I think that's to finish on a point you were talking about earlier, just on the Bitcoin and education. I meant to bring it up. Two things, and then to jump back forward here. One was that I actually ran for school board once. And one of the things I wanted to do was get the Wall Street Journal in every classroom. And people freaked out. Like parents and others freaked out that I would provide, that I was suggesting that students in high school actually learn how financial markets work. Like you're not supposed to know that. And it's funny because a couple of months ago, I was at an event in a local public library, and there was some free old books for kids. I took one for my niece, and it was like, "What is money for kids?" And one of the pages I like showing to the students, it says, "Money is something the government creates." That's how we were educated, right?
Yeah,
That is just one book, but that book is it's not a radical book. It's a kid's book, right?
but that's the epitome of the education in America and around the world of money for students.
Money is not something that you can create. It's something that you can go out and try to get. And for me, I don't want to keep pushing the point too much, but that's the point for me as a historian, and the idea of facts as well. It's just in the establishment way of education. It's the idea that there are just facts out there to go find. You can't create them. And I'm saying, no, they're out there for us to create. There's evidence, and we need to turn it into facts. And to me, it's the same idea. That's you have to go. You can create money. You can create the facts, and
Mhm.
you don't have to go out and find them. They're not ready made. And so, yeah, I
Yeah.
don't think I answered your full question though. What was
No,
the rest of your question?
the main point of my question is, it's getting increasingly more difficult for normal people, for
Ah,
newcomers
yes.
to
Okay.
understand Bitcoin. And
Yeah.
as an educator, how are you trying to make it easier for people to understand Bitcoin and money?
Yeah, certainly. Hands on. Hands-on, showing them how to do it. I was just in the dean's office of my college on my campus, and had a big meeting on building a center for Bitcoin studies here at Binghamton University. And the dean's office didn't really, they were confused. They don't really know how Bitcoin relates to
Of
anything we're
course.
doing. So what I did is I just came into the office. I had a little BitX. I had my terminal open. I had my node open in my console, and I just started showing them what it looks like, how we
Mhm.
actually create a wallet, very simple stuff, how we get transaction data, and really just demystifying what Bitcoin is. I think it really depends on where you live in America and maybe other places as well. But in New York, the first thing you have to do is separate it from the politics.
Hmm.
Because when you mention Bitcoin, it's a partisan issue typically in New York. And so, hey, ask them simple, silly things like what is the party of electricity or the light bulb or things, right? Or the internet or something. So, yeah, okay, yes, ridiculous. So, yeah, and I think that really just showing students and others the mechanics of it is the best way to demystify it, and then to show, because they say, "Oh, with this currency, what is this money?" And just showing them in a mempool, this is a Coinbase. Well, how did we create it? We created it through the SHA-256. And what is it? How does it work? And just showing them how it works. And when you see how it operates um, on the software side, and you see how it's not something scary, and we do that, and then we show them the miners in the lab, and they're not frightening. They've got a little BitX or a Nerd Miner or Avalon 3, which we've got on campus, and then start to show them the rest and get into heat recycling later. But I think it's just showing people the mechanics. And what's been happening a lot to me recently is that student groups on other campuses have been inviting me to teach them about Bitcoin and to bring Bitcoin to their campus. And so I pack up a whole bunch of mining equipment in my trunk, and I drive many, many hours to their campus, and I set it up, and students and faculty come and see how it actually works, what it really is. And I think when people can see the visuals and get their hands on it, that's the best way to educate people.
This is one of the many reasons why I love this idea of Bitcoin mining for heat reuse. When you're trying to educate a person, it is a lot easier, to your point, to just show them something physical and let them start to unpack that and understand the different things that kind of interplay together to make this physical object what it's doing, on a fundamental level, and how it's performing the actions that it's performing. And so when you tell somebody, oh, Bitcoin is money, Bitcoin does all these things, they're like, I don't really get that. And then you place a miner in front of them and you say, well, this is mining Bitcoin, and they're like, okay, I still don't get that. But when you say this is a heater and it pays for itself. And then they ask, well, what do you mean by that? And you say, well, this mines Bitcoin. It creates money. And in that process of creating money, it also generates heat. And
Yeah.
so you can pay for that heat generated through the money that it is creating at the same exact time. And that starts to get the gears turning, gets them juiced up a little bit, and then people start to dive into it more. Is this what you're seeing? Are you teaching at the Bitcoin lab? Are you showing people the heat reuse aspect interplayed with mining and Bitcoin?
Absolutely. I just had a big meeting yesterday in our lab about the experiments we're going to develop in the fall with our immersion mining kits. And yeah, heat recycling is really, well, I don't want to. Well, it's the alpha to me. I
Mhm.
mean, if you're in Bitcoin, it's the most important thing happening in Bitcoin, or one of the most important things happening in Bitcoin. Making sure we're safe from quantum computers is also very important. But this is one of the most important things because it's uh, yes. To answer directly, right? We are doing that in the lab and working on different experiments. We're trying to turn S9s into dehumidifiers. We're trying to grow cherry tomatoes. We're trying to maybe grow weed in the fall because it's perfectly legal.
Yeah.
Um, Technically, like, yeah, you only have to be 18 to grow it, so we can grow it on campus. So maybe, I don't know. We'll see how much, in Bitcoin, you're always pushing the limits what you can get away with.
Yeah.
But so. And the newest experiment we just started to think about is an idea I had, and probably others have had it. I just haven't talked to the heat punks guys about it yet. Is laser cooling, and that's the quantum side of me thinking about that with Bose-Einstein condensates and the idea of quantum unification and basically using photonic chips for ASICs. And if so, we can then just use lasers to cool them down, little small lasers.
Okay.
But uh, I don't know if it's completely ridiculous from a cost effective side. But
Uh-huh.
we're in a lab in our university. The fun part is we don't think about
You don't
that
think about the cost, you think about like the experiment
science.
and what you
We
get
think
out of
about
it.
absolutely. We think about the science and what we can do with it. And
Mhm.
laser cooling, I think, for us is the cutting edge of what we're attempting to do next year. So, or attempt, anyways. That and of course, uh, my slight obsession of ammonia cooling to turn a miner into an air conditioner. So
Yeah.
people make fun of me for that one, but because I'm so obsessed with it. But I know we can do it in a productive way. It's just a matter. So yeah, I think one student suggested putting a little chip in the phone, and I thought, okay, that's ridiculous. The phone is going to get really hot. Why do I want a really hot phone? But if we underclock it, if we have a really not a very powerful chip, maybe living in a very cold area like here in upstate New York, where it is still 50 degrees and rainy outside this time of year,
Mhm.
maybe a warm phone is nice. Maybe, uh,
Little hand warmer in your pocket.
yeah, exactly. Maybe you're walking around, you're waiting for the train or the bus or whatever, and it's could be nice. But it's not the obvious use case. But it's that's an example though of the students thinking of, wow, what can we do with it?
Mhm.
And we were very, very lucky this semester that we had Cade from Softwarm come, Cade Peterson,
Oh, that's
come
awesome. Yeah.
in person to our lab with the students, hands on with the machines, taking them apart, putting them back together. And the students were just thinking, like, wait, so in Manhattan, I could go to an office building and suggest that we could heat the whole building and they can generate Bitcoin. And Kate's like, yeah, I set it up in a car wash.
Mhm.
Like, oh wow, there's like a car wash near me. Maybe I'll go talk to them. And all the local farms around here and breweries and everything else that we can do with heat recycling.
Mhm.
And I think and and it's also helps the narrative of green energy, and it's because it's not just a false or empty narrative. It's a narrative that has been lost, and we need to reclaim it.
Mhm.
Right? When most people think of an electric car, they think good. Forget everything else. They just think good, or they think good for the environment, anyways.
Yeah.
Um, and this is clean heating. This is electric heating. So no one asks about an electric car. Okay, but where's that electricity coming from?
Mhm.
Everyone asks that about Bitcoin. So we need to have an open and honest discussion about all of our uses of electricity and where all of it is coming from, and why aren't we allowed in New York, for instance, to develop green energy projects?
Mhm.
Why are we being blocked from that? And so, yeah. Um,
My mind immediately goes to, tinfoil hat, immediately goes to like we are being suppressed and they're trying to control us. And I hate that my mind automatically goes to that point. But it from my understanding of the way the world works and my upbringing, I've only seen roadblocks and controls put in place to, silo people and keep them away from learning about these things. You know, we taught, like, we've all heard the story of the hydrogen powered car and what happened to that project, what happened to that guy who created it, what happened to Tesla, you know, what happened to the guy trying to create free energy. Like, you know, like, these things have been controlled and siloed. And
Mhm.
to me, when I go back and I think about Bitcoin mining for heat reuse, I think of those projects. I think about the hydrogen powered car. I think about free energy and Tesla. And I think about, like, what this can enable for the world. Because when you think about the virtuous cycle that mining heat kind of like creates, you know, you've got the monetary aspect of it. It's generating money, and it's generating the soundest, cleanest form of money that we have ever had as human beings. We've never created a better money before. And so it's generating that. And then it's also creating heat, which, you know, I would argue that probably at least 50% of the people in the world today need heat in some way, shape, or form to live a comfortable and productive life. So
Mhm.
you have that aspect. And then when you think about the things that heat can do for other processes, you know, I'm specifically going into, like, I want to buy a home on a piece of property and build a small homestead. And when I think about, like, oh, okay, on my homestead, you know, I want to go up somewhere in Montana, or, you know, the northern area in North America, because I want it to be a little colder so that I can generate this heat. But on my homestead, what processes need heat? Well, I mean, a barn that needs heat, you know, chicken coop that needs heat. My wife is into dog training, so the dog kennels would need to be heated. My garage, my shop would need to be heated. My home would need to be heated. And what does it mean for me as an individual if I could heat that entire area, the entire homestead, with Bitcoin heat? I
Mhm.
mean, it becomes it changes the analytics, the numbers of running a homestead completely, because now all of a sudden I'm no longer paying, or I'm not paying as much for the electricity to spend creating that heat. And then, you know, if I am raising chickens, if I am, you know, raising other types of animals, how large can those animals get? What kind of food production can I get from those animals? And how does that feed back into my life? And then it goes even a step further of, what can that do for the community? Because if you know, put it into a chicken coop perspective, you know,
Mhm.
when you give them the right temperature, the right environment, chickens can lay 3 times as many eggs, and they can get twice as large as they normally can. So
Mhm.
whether they're egg laying hens or they're meat birds, you know, all of a sudden, once you no longer have a need for the meat because you've got too much, or the need for the eggs, what does that do? Well, you go to the community, you say, hey, I have an excess of eggs and chicken that I am willing to trade to you, so you can have wholesome, you know, grain free, whatever the hell it is, like free range chickens.
Mhm.
What can you give me in return for that? And it, again, it just becomes this virtuous cycle of me building something for myself based on my own intrinsic value. There's that word again. My own way of viewing the world, what I need, my greed, my, you know, my incentives. And then it feeds into the community, and the community can then feed back into me. And I see this, you know, growing at an exponential pace in the future, as we start to see people like yourself building the Bitcoin lab and teaching people about how Bitcoin mining can play an integral role in the life that they want to build. And as we, you know, I'm going on a little bit of a rant here, but as we see more and more people pushing for this new American dream, I might call it,
Mhm.
for, no, not the big fancy house, not the big fancy car, not all of this stuff, but the wholesome lifestyle. You
Mhm.
know, we see more and more people today who are going out into the world looking for a piece of land, a piece of property that they can start to grow their life on, and they don't necessarily care about the rat race.
Mhm.
And so I think that, and I'd like to hear your perspective on this, you know, on this whole rant that I've just given. But, like, I think that as more people get into homesteading and getting into building sustainable lifestyles for themselves, they're going to start to see Bitcoin mining, Bitcoin heat reuse, and Bitcoin as money as these huge components to actually building that sustainable lifestyle. Because I would argue that building that lifestyle on a fiat system, take the mining aspect out of it completely, but building it on a fiat system is unsustainable, and you are not going to get to the place where you want to get to when you think about how you can provide to the community and the community can feed back to you. What are your thoughts on this long diatribe that I just went on? And just take it from there.
Well, the short answer is just yes. And then I'll go period. When I speak to students on other campuses and here as well, but they hear me so often, I say the same thing, that Bitcoin is the American dream. If you educate yourself, because everything to learn about Bitcoin is out there, it's free. No one's charging you to learn about Bitcoin. If they are, well, that's a different discussion. But you can find everything you can about Bitcoin for free. If you educate yourself and you work really hard on building from that education, you remain committed to that work, you can be successful and reach financial freedom and sovereignty, period. And Bitcoin allows that from every stage, just learning to creating my own money and my own homestead. And on the homestead, I think that's, for me as a historian, the fall of the Roman Empire and the rise into I mean, what you describe is a bit like the Middle Ages, particularly the early Middle Ages, or sometimes called the Dark Ages, from a centralist point of view. I think that's, I've always thought, or long thought, anyways, not always, long thought as a scholar, that people simply changed their mind. They wanted to live the way you're talking about right now. People wanted to do exactly that, create local currencies, build sustainable practices, have local sovereignty and freedoms. And to me, that's where we're at right now, is I think we're actually swinging back into the Middle Ages in a positive way, not in a negative way. And what I mean is from hyper centralization to decentralization. And there's a historian, Frank Ankerschmidt, who talks about that there's no such thing as sort of ancient, medieval, and modern. There's only ancient and modern as a dialectic, and it goes back and forth. And I think that's what we're seeing here. It's just a move into decentralization. I think it's incredibly exciting, empowering, a great time to be alive. Teaching the students this and saying, "Hey, when I was your age, I couldn't even imagine printing my. Hey, you can get a money printer in your house legally.
Yeah.
You can legally print money everywhere you go. And I think that in the heat recycling, there are so, I don't want to dox a lot of people and stuff, but there are so many incredible things, and I don't know if he'll kill me or not, but in the heat punks, we all know Pizza Andy, and he's doing this stuff with I won't go into it a lot, but 3D printers and ASICs, and to me that is just mind blowing.
Mm-hmm.
If you can successfully put ASICs in all 3D printers, it means that you could print an entire neighborhood of houses for people with 3D printers that are then generating the Bitcoin that can offset the costs of people building the houses,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that's it's unbelievable. I mean, I want to do this on campus and small experiments, but this is a transformative product, I think, for society. And there's so many other products. There's so many others building of home mining. I have one of Dane's hash rate house. His immersion kits in my basement, heating the water in the house
I love it.
with a couple of S19s. And Tyler's book about heat reuse.
Incredible book.
I mean, that is one of the most important books I've ever read in my life.
Yeah.
Period. And I give it to all the students, and we read through it. We have seminars about it, and next, it came out. We only had it some of this semester, but next semester we're really going to dig into it. Over the summer we will. But it gets to the point of the Bitcoin Policy Institute that, uh, and the point about conspiracy theories and stuff. I mean, it's on us to educate people.
Mhm.
We can't just expect people to change overnight and come there, and just start mocking people for not understanding. Not that we do, of course, but yeah, I was talking to someone yesterday, and he was saying how there was some issue in West Virginia with Bitcoin mining because of the coal industry, and that's understandable. I thought, because sure, from a business side, fine, but also everyday people, they're working in that industry. They make their living from that industry, and it's the same here in New York. People are making their living from existing industries. So how do we educate people and the industry and the politicians that by using Bitcoin and mining Bitcoin and using the heat, it can be better for all of us?
Mhm.
And we need so many educators. And the Bitcoin Policy Institute has a great team of fellows and a great team of staff, and it's continually growing to do exactly this, to
Mhm.
do the research to show, okay, this is the amount of energy being used on university campuses for Bitcoin mining, or this is the amount of homes that are mining Bitcoin. This is how much energy they're using relative to what they were before. This is how much financial freedom they've achieved. This is all research that needs to be done. This is why Brad Rettler out in University of Wyoming and his Bitcoin Research Institute starting in the fall, why they're going to be focusing on that, and getting people to research that. So this is on us. We have a lot of work to do to
Mhm.
educate people, and that's why heat recycling and education are for me the big alpha. And because you see the world a little bit differently when you realize how much we need heat in every little thing we do. I was just talking about book production with someone the other day. Even producing books, right, we need heat. We could be all the books that we're printing. We could be installing miners to generate revenue for small book presses
Uh-huh.
that struggle to stay alive to print books, and we can be printing them right here in America, by installing some Bitcoin mining. And there's just so much we can do, and if we all work together, I think it's a radical change that's happening. Uh,
Mhm.
it's truly transformational.
It goes back to this idea of decentralization of knowledge. When you can decentralize the truth and show people the facts around that truth, it helps people come to their own conclusions. And again, people are only as good as their incentives, and wherever they fall in life, you know with Bitcoin and mining, they're going to be incentivized to do better for themselves.
Mhm.
And that, again, it goes back to this feedback loop of you do what you're incentivized to do because of intrinsic greed, and that's not a bad thing. Like humans are greedy because we want to live better lives. But when we can benefit other people from that greed, that's when it becomes this feedback loop of, like I kind of alluded to earlier, when I do something for me, but you get to benefit from that. And then that benefit that you get also benefits me. It becomes this feedback cycle. And that's where this education comes into play immensely. What you guys are doing at the BPI, what you are doing at the Bitcoin Lab, and what others are doing all around the world, trying to educate new students, trying to educate the older generations as well about why Bitcoin matters as money, as a technology, and why the truth matters. At the end of the day, this is not me trying to tell you, oh, you have to believe in this thing. Taking it back to religion, you see a lot of religions. Well, this is the only one true God. And if you don't follow this God, you are damned to hell for eternity. That's not what Bitcoin is. Bitcoin is this thing. It's like, okay, here's this thing that you should educate yourself on, come to the realization of why it's better, and then we'll have conversations from there. It's not oh, you have to do this or your life is going to be eternally damned and you will find damn, like, that's not what it's about. It's about educating people and showing them the right way. Well, and not showing them the right way, allowing them to come to that path themselves through their own perspectives. And I think that that's really important. I we're kind of drawing up to a close here, and I didn't get to nearly half of what I wanted to talk about. We didn't get to talk about quantum computing and the relationship to Bitcoin and why we're scared, why we should be, fearful of that and how we can fix it. But maybe I can get you on for a podcast another time. The audience, this will come out just a couple weeks before we're set to go to Juneau for the Bitcoin Alaska conference. That's something that I'm really excited for, just because, anytime we can get a couple heat punks in a room and talk to people about Bitcoin mining heat reuse, I get a little excited. So I'm excited about that. Are you planning on being in Vegas next week?
I am, yes. I have to admit that I'm not very excited for Vegas, but I'm kind of dreading it a little bit. But
That's something you and I can agree on. Especially coming off the tails of the Heat Punk summit up there in Denver back in February. I just don't think that there's going to be many events that can top the signal that was coming out of that space versus like just the chicanery that is coming from a place like Vegas and a conference like the Bitcoin conference.
yeah,
I mean,
it's one of those things you feel like you have to do because all the meetings and people to catch up with and all that. But yeah, it's I mean the event in Denver at the space was just incredible. That's exactly the type of conference I like. It's and Bitcoin Alaska is going to be incredible.
yeah.
So my eyes are on that, very much focused. But yeah, we can talk more about particularly quantum mining. That's my interest, and not so much the quantum computing side as such, but it relates in a way. But it's quantum mining, which I don't know. There must be others thinking about this stuff. I just haven't found them. But yeah, we can dig more into that
Yeah,
another time.
definitely something I want to dive into. And there's a lot of new ideas that people are trying to play with and experiment with, and I think it's really exciting. I also think it's a little scary, if we think about how the nature of Bitcoin will shift over time because of these new technologies and new ways to generate Bitcoin. And what does that mean for the average person who can't afford a $30,000 computer that mines Bitcoin? I don't know. And it's really over my head when I think about the intrinsic deep thinking, deep thoughts. It definitely goes over my head.
That's also on us too. Like technology is just technology. We decide what we want to do with it.
Yeah.
We can let this become a way to just replicate the old systems of power and centralization. Will we? That's I don't know. But we are the generation right now that people will look back to in 20, 30, 40, 50 years, say, wow, Bitcoin could have done this. The
Mhm.
world could have been a better place. Are we going to, what do we have to decide
Mhm.
what we're going to do with it?
I I like to believe that the world is going to be a better place. I like to believe that it's a phase shift that takes time. It's not something that we're going to wake up next week and the world is going to be different. It takes time to build out the systems. It takes time to educate people, and it also takes time for people for that education and for the truth to sink in. Some people, they will never get it. Some people get it immediately, and some people it takes time for them to fully grasp or even partially grasp what we're trying to teach people. And so I just, in my opinion, and this might be a very uneducated simpleton type answer to it, but it takes time, and we can't stop hammering that home. We got to keep on educating. We got to keep on being that loud, obnoxious Bitcoiner who never shuts up about the thing, and everybody comes, you walk into the room and everybody rolls their eyes because they're like, oh, there's Trevor, oh, there's Bitstory and gonna talk about Bitcoin again, and I'm okay with that. I've never been shy from that, from being the odd man out and being the weirdo in the room. I just think that it also entails like us, instead of speaking at people, trying to find common ground and talk to people from their perspective, from the way that they understand the world. Because if you talk at someone, they're just going to glaze over and they're not going to care about what you have to say, versus when you speak to someone, when you have a conversation and you try to, relate on a lot of different aspects of what you're trying to tell them, then you can really get your points across and you can understand why they feel the way they do, whether it's for it or against it. So I do think that that's really important when it comes to education and shows like this, and then what you're doing at BPI and the Bitcoin Labs. It's really important to get people excited and have conversations based on that excitement. So
Right.
before I let you go ahead.
I just say real quick that I just want to emphasize that it's over the next 5-10 years. It's there's going to be a lot of tests of courage to remain committed to what is Bitcoin as we're seeing it here, as we're talking about it, as helping the world and helping people. Because again, the technology is just a technology. Even if we educate everybody in it, it's going to be up to us what we do with it. And if enough people have gained a bunch of financial sovereignty from Bitcoin, is that it? They're just going to abandon it and say, "Who stop fighting to make it something else?" Because, and the other side is just the state of euphoria, the idea that when all of a sudden Bitcoin is being accepted here, and they're talking about, and this big person is talking about it, and then we're just so excited that it's everywhere that we just don't look at what's really happening in it and its centralization and other issues. And I think that's going to be a real test for us, both because its acceptance is going to test, are we going to then keep pushing? And when people do make it in Bitcoin in terms of financial security, how many people are going to remain committed to building a decentralized system and they're just going to go back to the old ways? So it's a real test of what we'll do with it. We failed many times as society with new technologies to use it for something better. Will we fail again? I don't know, obviously, but I
Only
hope
time
not.
will tell. Well, at the end of the day, only time will tell, and we can
only
only
only the time chain will tell.
there you go. Exactly. All right, Michael. The last question. If you're familiar with the show, I ask everyone this question just to, really get into the metaphysical, the philosophy of Bitcoin and you personally. So, Bitstorian, what does Bitcoin mean to you?
Yeah. Bitcoin, well, like any good lecturer or preacher, I'll finish with how I began. Bitcoin is an experiment in decentralization. It's the re-actualization of the attempt we've made many times as society to live together without centralized power. Um, and that's to me what it is. Period. It's obviously a currency. It's obviously provides value in a new way. It does a lot of things. Bitcoin. It's a fulfillment of the scientific method, but first and foremost, it's an experiment, another attempt at building a decentralized society, going at least back to the early Christian days, and played out many times since then, and probably before then. Will we end up with the same results? I don't know. Maybe that's just human existence. We swing back and forth on the pendulum.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, that's Bitcoin for me, an experiment in decentralization and reimagining the very essence and structure of our society and our being. We ask questions like, I ask the students, is God decentralized or centralized? I don't know. And you immediately think centralized, right? It's monotheism, but then you think, well, I don't know. Then some people think God is everywhere and this, and that sounds a lot more decentralized to me. So, and that came up because of Bitcoin.
Mhm.
And so I think Bitcoin really makes us think about this, um, dialectic between decentralization and centralization, what it really is, what it means, what our world actually is, and what type of world do we want.
That is a beautiful place to end this episode on, Michael. I really appreciate that. This conversation was enlightening for me, and I think we need to get you back on again to really dive further into the quantum aspects of this. It's something that I'm curious about. It's something that I'm very interested in, and it's also something that is like slightly overwhelming and scary for me. So I think maybe we can get you on, and you can either terrify me some more or appease my fears or make my fears go away. I don't know. So
Yeah.
we'll get you back on in the future.
Are you afraid of having lasers in your house cooling down your miners?
I never even thought about that, but I don't think that scares me so much as somebody coming in and controlling the Bitcoin network because they have all the computing power in one room. You know, that's what scares me more. But
Sure.
conversation for another day. I'm excited to, I look forward to talking with you more. I'm excited for Bitcoin Alaska. Same with you. I'm dreading, or maybe not dreading, but like not really looking forward to Bitcoin Vegas. But I'll be there either way. We'll catch up. Maybe have a beer or two.
Yeah.
Really appreciate your time today, brother, and I
Yeah.
hope you have a good one. Real quick, can you just tell the audience where they can find you, how they can reach out?
Sure. You can find me on X at Bitstorian or Telegram at Bitstorian or at the Bitcoin Policy Institute. Just go to their website. You'll see me as one of the fellows, or Binghamton University's website, the Judaic Studies Department. So I'm pretty easy to find. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, and we'll see you very soon.
Yep. See you in Vegas and then Alaska.
All right. What did you guys think of that episode? I definitely want to hear your feedback. I want to, hear what you guys have to say about our conversation. I think it was enlightening. Definitely didn't touch too much on mining. I think we kind of, we dove into heat reuse a little bit there and really just discussed a lot of the themes and topics around the history of Bitcoin and religion as well. Michael is a wealth of information, and I really enjoy his conversations and his company. So I hope you guys enjoyed that as well. I will put the links to find him in the show notes so that you can reach out if you want to learn more about any of the things that he discussed today. But yeah, with that, guys, this has been another podcast. This has been another Build a Mind podcast. I'm your host, Trevor Bello. Please don't forget to leave a like, follow, a comment, share, subscribe. Really, it does help push this podcast forward, and it helps me know that you guys care, that you guys appreciate the content that we're sharing out, and that you want me to record some more content. So I know it's a little self-serving on my end, but I really do appreciate it. So I will see you guys next time on the Build a Mind podcast. Peace out.